Hey guys, this weekend is right before the release of Ultra Engine 0.9.8. So, this is mostly just going to be a meeting to discuss any final touches that we're putting on the first person shooter example. I've been working on this with two very talented developers. Reap Blue and Andy90 have been massively helpful in level design and modeling and painting models. They've both done a really, really fantastic job. And yeah, I mean, everybody came through and did what they said they were going to do and did a really nice job of it. Um, and last week we had a lot of really creative. You're gonna enjoy the. I think you're really going to enjoy playing the first person shooter example because the little level we made, uh, we added a lot of creative touches to it, and I was surprised a lot of it actually came from sound. I started adding sounds like last week, and I didn't really have an idea of what we needed. I was just like, okay, I guess we need some sounds. Okay, so excuse me. So
Yeah,
I
that's why I've
added.
been very critical of the sound engine in the Ultra engine.
Well, I mean, it works. It does. It. I didn't have any
It,
problems with it.
yeah, it works, but it's what I was gonna say is like sound is everything. Like I think comic composer can like argue for me about how important sound is.
Well, a lot of the. So we came up with. I'm not going to spoil any of the gameplay for you because there are jump scares. There's a lot of scripted sequences. In fact, I've got a shot here of what the flow graph looks like. So this is the flow graph for the level. All these connections. This is all scripted sequences. And this is actually like really, really cool because all of this set up, we added so much interaction in the game that doesn't involve any programming. Just little one off things, you know? Just like you need a trigger that, when you walk here, something else happens. I'm not going to tell you what because it's a surprise, but you'll find out soon enough. Um, and so this isn't actually even all of it. It actually got more complex than that. All of this, the part that's circled in red, you'll notice that all of these events are coming out from this one trigger right here. So when you run into this is a collision trigger. It's just this invisible volume that you walk into. When you do that, this whole chain of events is set off, and that right there is the whole combat sequence that we put in. And at first, I wasn't planning on any of this. I was just gonna have like one or two monsters run out, and then I was like, okay, this isn't fun. We need to do something more interesting. And it turned into, in a couple of days, it just turned into this huge sequence. This is an example. I think this is from the game Photo Museo 3D, which is part of the Leadworks game bundle. But the developer, he makes extensive use of the flow graph, and that's a shot he posted, which is pretty funny. But
Yeah, but notice like compared to his and ours, it's actually flows. Like you can actually follow it for the museum.
oh yeah,
It's
yeah,
a
this is
rat's
pretty.
nest.
It is. He's got a lot going. He's got a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can probably clean this up a little, make this a little bit nicer, maybe. But
Well,
um,
if we could prefab some of the logic, that would help. But
yeah. So here's a shot. This looks a lot better in motion because I added this spinning light, and the particles like light up and have shadows on them, which is very cool. Just testing a lot of monsters. Obviously, we can have a large number of them. Um, Another shot that looks pretty good. Bullet holes, they work. You can have a lot of them. There's the navigation mesh. Okay, so talking about sound, there was a couple of interesting moments. Um, so that whole light, the spinning light with the particle effects, that came about because I found that rickety uh, sound that sounds like some machinery, and then I was like, oh, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make that like spinning light that fans of Stalker will remember that. And then the whole combat sequence, it actually came about because of one sound. Um, you know that it's a little bit subtle, but like when you're approaching the tunnel, you start hearing this like rhythmic, like hammer noise in the background, this metal clank. Have you guys noticed that?
Yeah,
Okay, so that was just going to be a one. That was just originally that was just a trigger that was just going to. I like walked through that area and I was like, you know what? I want a sound to set off right now because this is a good time for just a little, not a jump scare, but just a little bit of a, you know, a little surprise like that. And then I couldn't really hear it at first because it wasn't very loud and it was like blending with the player's footsteps. I also like noticed like you have to like kind of balance the sound so that you can hear.
yeah, yeah. It's called mixing, and it's very hard with the current how we have everything set up right now. I think other products, or even if you integrate like Fmod Studio, you can actually balance all the levels accordingly.
Mm. Well, what I did is when you get far enough away from from the fan, then that noise, that spinning light,
Yeah,
rickety sound, that noise fades out, and then I wanted something to come back in to fill up the void. There's still like some background ambient droning, but I wanted something else to come in, and that's what that metal clink was. But you don't always hear it because sometimes it happens at the same time as your footsteps, and so it makes it hard to hear. And it's kind of a soft, very deep, like reverbery noise, so it's easy to miss. And then so I just left it on repeat because I couldn't. Wanted to make sure it was working. And then I left it on repeat, and I was like, oh, this actually sounds really cool because now you have this like this clanking noise, clank, clank, and the timing is it's regular, but it's like the spacing is so long that it's you can't. It doesn't really have. It feels like it doesn't really have a beat. And once I had that, I was like, oh, I feel more tension now. Like I feel like the intensity of the dread is increasing because of this noise I just added as I'm walking into this tunnel. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. Like, then I removed the ambient drone. And then so all you have is that clinking. And that sounds really, really dreadful. It sounds like something's about to happen, right? Did you guys get that?
yeah, yeah. I think after the event, the drone should come back. Maybe the lights should all come back on, like everything's fine, to signal that everything's over. But yeah, I heard it, and I think what you experienced is you got an idea rush because you had things to play with. It's really hard to make things or get ideas when you don't have anything or you have to make things by
Mm-hmm.
scratch. So I think like sound is one of those things that um not only like terrible for us, but it's gonna be terrible for everyone because I was downloading that Silence pack and I downloaded all of 2015, all of 2016. It got started 2017, then it started to have issues. But what I was getting from those packs, some of them are so good. They need work. You need to go into Audacity and make them mono and maybe snip them or whatever. But a lot of those sounds, I believe, are supposed to be mixed in like a DAW program, and that's why I mentioned I think we have to treat sounds in the future like how we were treating materials or textures,
I
where we can't
had,
just
sorry, go ahead.
no, well, we can't just put a material on the wall like we could like in Source or in Leadworks. We actually have to blend it. They need more care, and the sounds are set up to be blended and manipulated like the textures on those PBR sites are set up to be.
I had better results. Actually, like the Sonus sound packs, I didn't think they were that great. It was just like random stuff. Like here's 2 minutes of a dog barking. Here's a
Again,
highway overpass.
they need to be cut, manipulated, mixed. They're good to they're I use some of Silence's stuff for Cyclone, but I actually had to edit it and like tone it down or change like the pitch or the frequency or whatever.
Yeah,
Um, but you have to like really see it. You can't just listen to it and be like, "Wow, that'll be really good here." You have to actually like listen and think how it can be used.
I had a lot better results. I think the website I was looking at was freesounds.com.
Yeah, you sent the
I
link
got
on
some
that.
really good stuff off of there, and you just have to. A lot of it is CCO. You um, so yeah, that was definitely don't just rely on Sonus, but
It had good ambient tone stuff
mm,
because it's like a whole like it's all like 5 minutes just like of a room, and that could be used. You
yeah.
have to still mix it and everything, but
Well,
they
I
have
found
good
a lot of
ambient
stuff
stuff.
that was I found a lot of stuff that was ready to use and was perfectly fine. Some of it
Yeah,
I use Goldwave audio. Um,
I used that program in the before. I just like I have like an old copy of Audacity that I haven't updated since 2006, and it just works. So I just leave it alone.
but the one thing I had to do is on a lot of the sounds they were kind of too quiet, and so there's an auto gain feature, and so I
Yeah.
applied that to some. I cut some of them. I like cut them off and made them shorter, um, and just like
Mhm.
faded them out. But that was pretty easy to do. But
Do we have
anyways,
do we have
the
MP3 and org support in Ultra Engine or just
what's
Wave?
that?
Do we have MP3 or OGG support in Ultra Engine or just Wave?
It's just Wave right now, but we'll probably add the others soon. Um,
Okay.
the so anyways, the once the audio for that whole setup was done, it was like uh it's pretty dramatic. You guys will see it. And once I had that, I was like, okay, this isn't like I can't just have like one or two monsters running out. Like this is a big moment. And so it turned into a much bigger fight than I was anticipating. In fact,
Yeah,
like the player is not meant to survive it. Um,
I never died.
oh, I died a lot of times. Um,
You just run back and you
don't
just
tell them
grab.
the secret. Um, yeah, if you yeah, it's pretty. The difficulty is pretty high because it's the end of the level anyway. So, um, but the let's see. Yeah, so that whole combat sequence, it really all came about because of one sound. Um, another interesting thing I found was the collision geometry and the mesh geometry can be two different things. There's some situations where I needed monsters to I needed some areas for monsters to come out of that the player could not enter, and so the collision does not allow the player to enter, but the monsters, since they're just running on the nav mesh, I was able to build like I was able to add like some objects, some solid objects that act as navigation obstacles and have the nav mesh built on them, but they don't have collision. And so I was able to control like have basically two different uh, geometries that the monsters were able to go through and the player was able to go through. And I think it actually gave me a lot of insight into how they probably designed a lot of zombie games. So
Well,
one thing that I found that looks really good is when you have monsters coming out of coming from like a lot of different directions from a lot of different locations. It kind of like something changes, like your perception of it changes, and it starts to feel fun. So that was an interesting experience.
So, so like these places where the monsters can go through, but the player can't get through. I was looking at that area. I was like wondering how you did it. Because I don't know. I have to like really look. I don't know what
I
I can and can't say.
I
So,
would just put like some crates. I just put some crate like a crate down that the player, and then there's a
mhm.
big invisible wall the player can't go through. And then I just
Right.
built like a little ramp going up and going
Hmm.
across, and then a ramp coming down. And so it looks like the monster is like running over the crate, even though he's just going right through it. But he's going up the
Yeah.
ramp and then coming down the ramp.
So the monster that's not, because we have this clip brush right here, and
He doesn't collide with that. Their behavior, their movement is completely controlled by the navigation mesh.
not by physics.
Yeah,
That's interesting. Okay.
and yeah, and okay, so it actually worked out really well. So in order to make it so that I wanted the player to not be able to walk through the monsters, and I wanted the monsters to not be able to walk through the player, but they're on
Right.
these totally different systems. So the way I did this is the player has a navigation agent that just constantly gets repositioned based on the player's location, and the
Hmm.
monster has a physics body that is constantly repositioned based on the navigation mesh. And so when you do that, um, if the player walks forward into the monster, the player gets stopped. If the monster walks forward into the player, the monster gets stopped. But the two different types of objects, the player cannot push the monster, and the monster cannot push the player. So it actually like all worked out perfectly. And you have the benefit of, uh, the nav mesh. The movement for that is very cheap to calculate. So you don't have a lot of more expensive physics calculations at all. Um,
That's really interesting. I mean, I don't have really AI experience, but so you're saying like the collision for so if character controller is using the nav mesh to navigate instead of set input, um, it only cares about where it can go on the navigation mesh. It doesn't care if it's like if the clip brush is in between point A and point B, as long as there's a connection in the nav mesh to get there, right?
right. Yeah, the nav mesh, and yeah, yeah.
Okay, so why does the player need the navigation? Because I saw some navigation references in the player code, and I was really confused why that was there.
That the player has a navigation agent so that the
Hmm.
monsters don't walk through him.
All right, I would have to look at the code, but it's very interesting.
It just force repositions the agent, although the physics are what determines the agent's position, and then that way
Hmm.
the monsters can't get too close to you, like not they don't can't walk inside you. It worked out
Right.
really really great. In Leadworks, I hid all of that, and I the two systems were like sort of behind the scenes. They were connected together.
Uh-huh.
And in Ultra, I kept them completely separate, and it actually like worked out perfectly. I couldn't have asked for a better result.
Right. No, you just remove the need to have like an NPC clip or whatever, because the navigation is pretty much the clip in that sense. So you can't like have like a player clip that only affects players and an NPC clip that also affects NPCs. You can just have a clip brush, and then you can control what kind of clip brush that is based on the navigation, if it blocks navigation or not.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
If we talk about brushes and all the stuff, um, you think it's possible that you remove the terrain or the mesh layers from the viewport which are not 3D, or at least an option, because it's really hard to
Yeah, yeah,
use them.
yeah. Actually, like that's definitely something I want to do. It's not going to happen in the next 2 days, but yeah, I think that's very important. There should be an
Um,
option that says like view mesh layers, and so you can toggle that on and off. That I think that would be good.
And Andy do like a hack that we did in Leadworks where you just add discard, like a just like if like greater than 0 discard in the terrain shader, or is it a little bit more complicated than that? Because that was a hack people did in Leadworks so they can actually see what they're working on.
That's not great because you still have
No,
all
it's
the
not great, but it's a
yeah
hack if you can use.
yeah uh yeah. I'll see about that. Like as soon as we start getting some builds for 099.
Yeah.
So do you guys have like a yeah, we got have we got the pipes done. Those look good. Uh the modular fence pieces look really nice.
Yep. Why isn't the
Uh
base attached to the pole?
because there's some situations where you might if it's like if that pole is like on the edge of something,
Uh,
then there's not going to be enough space for the base. Or like if it's right up against the wall, you would actually want the base to be moved in a little bit. That's actually something I saw in like I was looking at a lot of like engineering diagrams and photos and stuff.
right. No, we got some models that still need to be swapped out or have its textures. We got the half tube,
Oh yeah, that's mine. I'll do that.
we got the wires in the tunnel, and then we got that, and you already painted it, it's already ready to go. It just needs to be adjusted and swapped out. The end caps for the for the um for the tunnels. Those need to be swapped out still.
I thought they were. I thought the new ones were already in there.
They're in, but because like they have to be like their position needs to be rearranged so they can
Oh,
just swap in. Yeah, and I don't know like these aren't my models. I don't know how it should be.
okay.
So I
What's
kind of
that? What's this about the wire? What wires are you talking
the
about?
wires in the tunnels. They're just a default. They're just using the default material.
I thought they had a unique. I thought they had a material assigned to them that was.
No, they're just
They
using the default
originally
material.
did. I'll
Well,
check that
I
out
mean,
because there's
yeah,
that came from a that
I
that
think
came
they
from a
did.
model on Sketchfab, and I
I think
got
they
rid of everything
did.
except the wires.
I think it did, but you probably didn't push the material. So I
Yeah.
thought, oh, we don't have the material for this, so I just replaced it
Oh,
with the
okay.
default
Yeah.
material. And um, we need to do something better with the little light, the spinning light, because I just stuck a brush. I just jammed a brush in there, but I don't want to change. I don't want to change the height of the light because I like how the light looks. But I don't know. Maybe we can build something real quick out of brushes, make it better than just a block.
Okay.
Um, we need to add the pipes. The ceiling in the first tunnel
Oh yeah.
area.
Yeah.
If that's not painted or anything by like Sunday evening, I'm probably just gonna replace it with a brush and just call it a day.
Andy, do you think you
Uh,
can get the that ceiling tile piece
I
done?
don't. I doesn't find the ceiling tile in the project structure. The structure thing was empty. There was no model in.
Okay, it's possible I might not have added it. Um, I'll I'll check on my other computer in a minute here.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah, if there's a model, I can paint it
yeah, I think
tomorrow.
it'll. Yeah, I don't think it'll take you very long. Um, okay. Anything else? Have you guys got everything you need?
Yeah, I have to painting. I don't know how I would paint the tunnels or the stationary because like I don't want to go crazy because I kind of like how it is, but at the same time, like like I'm worried that it by painting it, I'll just make everything look worse, like too noisy. Because I have to fix the paint job in the first room, because of that brush that got replaced. Um,
Yeah, that was my fault. We're
No,
not falling through the floor though. That was actually like my biggest fear. I was like, oh, I was just like, oh yeah, so like somebody's gonna make like a big YouTube video about it. Hey, let's check out Ultra. Let's see what happens, and then they fall through the floor, and that was
yeah,
my biggest fear. But that's all. That's all. That was actually caused. I think it was caused by the door. There's some code in there that like was positioning the door that I put. And I don't know why that would happen because it positions it and then and then it puts it back.
yeah.
But somehow that
Well,
triggers like a massive force in the joint, and I think it was just causing like
yeah. Well,
and it was so erratic. I would have to. It would only happen like one about 10% of the time.
yeah. Speaking of the door, I looked at the code. Does the door when you check a door to start open, does it actually start open?
I
Because
don't know. I think we should just remove that feature for now because we don't really know how it works and hasn't been tested.
yeah, well, there's a lot of things we cut out that we had and we just cut out in the final thing. But yeah,
It's
um,
better to
shifting simple.
it's better to not have a feature than to have a feature that you don't really know how it works.
Right. Well, I wanted like this, just like retrospective. I kind of wanted like a ship with all the components you actually need, but then you and I were, well, especially you, over the last few days, you were like running into a lot of issues with the component system. The limitations of having a component system versus just using a class hierarchy system, and I think looking back on it, I think really just showing how to do like the little things is enough. And then we should just let the end user choose how they want to make their game. Because you and I both are a fan of class inheritance. Um, but the other people might want to use the entity component system as is. So
I think it's good to do a little bit at a time because you get a better understanding of how
right.
things work.
Also,
We did use like multiple components quite heavily.
we use the relay
So that
component a lot.
yeah, so that was having multiple components. That was really helpful.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's and then there's also some things where I found like you just can't really break things apart or if you can, then it's more work than just having it as one class. So like,
Yeah.
okay, what one really good thing is the weapon code is completely separate from the player code, and they're
Yeah.
different entities anyway. So it doesn't really, it's not really, um,
Critical.
it's not really an example of multiple components per se, but just having that code separate is I feel was a big improvement over how I did it
Well,
in Leadworks. The best example I think of like where the ECS really shines is something like the impact sound component because that's entirely self-contained and it's just this little bit of functionality that you want to add to many different objects and
yeah.
it doesn't interfere with other things. That's a really good example
Yeah.
of where it's very useful.
I I think like I was like pondering this like conundrum here. I think like we want like I not you have to, but I think we should like the game designer in this case. I think they should like say, okay, what is a component? What should be more of an actor? So like an actor would be players, monsters, things that make your game, and then components are oh, I want this to be able to hide, or I want this to change color. Just like little compartmentalized functionality that you can share with your friends and such, but like your actors, quote unquote, are just components that are like have a lot of functionality and they're pretty much like the main thing, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's pretty hard to like. It's pretty difficult to separate uh, things into like something like the first person controls, it's pretty difficult to separate that into a bunch of different components, and you could, but you would end up with something that was way overcomplicated, and then
You have to count for anything that can be attached or won't be attached, and
yeah,
that's a little frustrating.
yeah. I mean, in reality, I think these features are not as easily isolated as you might think, and like you can do it, but you end up with a lot of like strange little situations that, yeah, it's.
Right.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
happy with the result we came up with.
No, but I think going forward, I think just like a warning to everyone, I think if you're using C++, you should really think about, okay, what's actually like an actor in the case, like a player or a monster or an NPC, versus like, oh, what is just loose functionality? What's just something that like, changes the color or
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the really interesting thing about this example is it shows just how much it shows a lot of functionality that can be set up with no programming whatsoever, that's not really something I push. But at this stage, I know that was a pretty popular way to use LeadWorks. We actually had quite a lot of people who just got LeadWorks and made their game, and they just used the existing scripts that were available and connected them together to make sequences of events like this. And there's actually like quite a lot you can do with this. So I'm definitely in. To me, that's like the highest level of game development, because that's when you're really really focused on the user experience. And I had a lot of fun. The project was very fun. It was very nice working with you guys on through this whole thing. Even though we ended up with something completely different from our original concept, but I'm very happy with the results, and I hope that the users all enjoy playing the level next week.
Yep.
The initial file, you could bring in the executable files according to what your program needs, and then if there's an error within the area, you could adjust or rewrite and execute in a different file location and bring that in and remove the other executable file. For example, you want one type of sound in this area, and then you bring in the executable file to make another type of sound come in that is stored on another file location.
Hmm.
What we have works. I got add pipes and I gotta fix the paint job. But I didn't get an answer to my question. What about painting in the other rooms? Do we think we need the painting, or
I
should
think
we
it
just
looks
leave?
better with it.
All right. So what should I paint?
I think the ceiling in
the dome
the
area.
big room.
I'm worried about doing that because they're all like weirdly shaped brushes, and I'm worried that the vertices won't line up.
Hmm.
And yeah, I thought about that. I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if I could paint this. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't think the vertices will line up here. So
I think they do.
I could try
It's
to
just
subdivide it.
there's just those interior faces. They should. I haven't looked at how it's
Well,
subdivided.
none of it's subdivided in that area, but I will just.
Yeah, I don't know. You're the artist. Don't ask me.
Walls and such because okay.
Yeah, I want to add the.
So I'll have.
I might actually take. I might do the painting in that first hallway.
All right.
I want to use that construction tessellated material that looks so good. Yeah, but
All right.
I think we're good. I'll go and right now and go look on my other computer for the ceiling tile, see if it's in there, see if it's actually in there, and then everybody knows what they need to do, and we're almost just about done.
Yeah, I just need to. I'll work on the map. Um, I'll work on the map today, right after this meeting. And
Yeah. So this will probably be out possibly the 9th. I don't think we're gonna. I'm not gonna have the demo converted to Lua yet. I'll only have it for C++, but I don't think it'll take that long. I think that'll take me like an extra day or two.
right. Well, the components are now very simple, so it should
Yeah,
sound
yeah. You can
sound.
like ChatGPT is actually pretty good at converting C++ to Lua. It's not. I mean, you still have to go back through and fix the mistakes, but that's faster than doing the whole thing yourself.
Did you ever thought about hosting your own language learning model, giving it your API and having it convert locally?
I don't know how to do that.
Uh there's ways. I don't know how to do it either, but I'm pretty sure if you talk to the right people,
Yeah.
there's probably a way to do it. That would be very useful if you could just have something locally to say, "Hey, I need this," or you ask a question like, "Oh, how do I do this?" or convert Unity code to Ultra code. That'd be
If you just
very
go to
useful.
u.com,
Mhm.
it's basically free, like YOU. It's free Chat GPT. And there's sometimes there's a prompt that blocks the screen that asks you to log in. But if you just like right click or just go into developer mode, if you just hide that HTML item, then you can go ahead and start using the page without logging in. YOU.com, u.com.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't want to give you any spoilers this week. So next week we'll actually like go through the gameplay, and we'll be able to explain some of the design decisions. So if you guys want to talk about like the things you did and like why you chose to do things a certain way, that would be an interesting topic. Um, but yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Does anybody have any questions?
Mm, Not really. I think we all know what we need to do. Oh, hi. When do you want everything to be finalized on Monday morning or Sunday evening or?
Sunday afternoon, ideally.
Yeah, because you
Yeah,
have to
well,
go through and figure out what we actually used and what we didn't.
yeah. I'll try to. I'm gonna try to. If it's ready, I'm gonna try to upload it like Sunday afternoon at the earliest.
All right, that means I only have pretty much today to work on it.
Yeah, I only have 2 or 3 things which I think are plans for the future, right? So water is one thing,
Mm-hmm.
and the another big thing which is really interesting for me, especially is the spline tool.
Yeah.
That is
Oh,
actually possible to create roads and other stuff. I mean, river you can create with simply water and lower the terrain. I think this
Yeah.
would be no problem, but making roads following like hills or something like this would be really hard, I think,
Yeah.
with
Oh
brushes
yeah, yeah.
on.
I've got a lot of ideas for next year. All right. So thank you everyone for joining. I'm gonna stop the video now.